something can be therapeutic, but that doesn't mean it's therapy, right? And being able to to be able to discern that and to use those words to articulate that is really important.
Welcome back to the podcast. I started this podcast as a way to help Black men in all aspects of our lives. Studies show on average we lose 2.8 years of our life when we're under heavy stress. And I think we can gain those 2.8 years back if we express ourselves healthily. Stick with me as I interview therapists, doctors, advocates, activists, and friends about how we can be better as Black men and as a Black community. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube and following us on Instagram and TikTok, you'll definitely want to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Y'all, I'm here with Percell. Percell is a strength coach, a creative marketing. He also owns a creative marketing agency called Fit For Us. He works with some dope clients, man. Percell, how you doing?
I'm well, man. How are you?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, man. I'm glad to finally have you on the podcast for us to chop it up, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bro. I'm really excited. And shout out to the homie Tanya for the recommendation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tanya is dope. We had a really good episode on pregnancy and how men can handle that better with partners, relationships, dating, relationship trauma, all that good stuff, man. So Tanya, definitely super dope, man. So I definitely appreciate her for extending that invitation, man. But I wanted to have you on and just talk about your journey and how you've gotten to where you are, and also you have an interesting story where you kind of work two jobs at the same time. Right. And so I feel like it's so important, especially with someone like you, that's, I will call you a high performer, right? Because you're doing two basically, and they're kind of in the same area, but they're not really in the same area. So you may have different schedules, calendars, all that kind of stuff that comes with different levels of stress and different levels of communication and processes and all that kind of stuff, bro. So how do you handle that? What does your process look like? Because I feel like for someone like you must have some kind of process so that it's not overwhelming for you.
Yeah, I do. I would say first and foremost, I'm a very direct communicator in terms of my personal boundaries and what I have the space for and how I know I am able to show up as the best version of myself, regardless of whatever space I'm in. And with those boundaries, I'm very clear with myself about the things I need to do to prepare for work, prepare for the day, prepare for just whatever life in the universe has to offer and throw at me. I think oftentimes when I can enter into spaces and feel like there's a level of not necessarily control, but more so understanding that regardless of what variables and shifts may happen, that the outcome is me being at peace with whatever decisions I make. So for me, that process really is about journaling. That's something I do throughout the day. I reflect on a conversation I had or a moment where I felt upset, or maybe sometime where I felt really excited about something. I'll just write it down and acknowledge those feelings. Something else that I'm really a fan of is just mindfulness. I have a mindfulness practice. I meditate daily. Sometimes it's, active meditation. I might be on a run. Sometimes it's more sedentary with eyes closed and, hands on my thighs, knees bent, and I'm just, processing and going through breathing exercises. But I think for me, the ability to lock in on a singular thought and simultaneously focus on that, but not for the sake of performance, but for the sake of just being present in that moment, has been really helpful for me in terms of just navigating my personal journey.
Right, man, that's dope. You really took me to some of the things that I've done personally in my healing journey, and some of the things that I tell guys to do all the time, which is meditate and then also journal. So what does your journaling process look like? I know you talked about reflecting on a certain conversation or something that happened throughout the day or whatever the case may be, but what does that normally look like for you? Do you write it down, or are you more audio, visual, or video, or what is it?
Yeah, so I have my phone, my Google Docs, man. If anyone ever wanted to know the secrets to my entire life, if they broke into my phone and you went through text messages and DMs, you wouldn't find much there. But if you went through my Google Docs, through my notes app, you would get all the tea. My thumbs are constantly just gang banging on my screen. And whenever I have something I just need to get off my chest, that's my go-to format. I used to write a lot, But what I recognize is that sometimes either my book would get like destroyed in my commute because I got a bag, it's got sneakers in there, it's got, shea butter, deodorant, it's got bottles of water, like it can just get a little messy, So having a device that I can just go to and type. But I would say that what I've learned is that when I have those moments, I put my phone on, like my service is off, like my wireless, everything, like there's no connection. It's literally just a device that I can write on at that point, because I don't want anything to interfere with that thought process and my ability to express myself. So that's a staple for me. I do that throughout the day. I do not have like a defined time other than before I go to bed. Like at night, if something's bothering me, something happened during the day that I just am like struggling to process, I'll make sure to spend some time just like talking through it on my screen really quickly. And then that way I can just start my process of going to bed. I have like a nighttime routine that helps me like turn my brain off and transition into like a restful state. And I usually will kick that off with like a few minutes of just like reflecting and writing down like what my day was like.
That's dope, bro. I love that you have a process for it and that works for you, bro. You spoke a little bit about boundaries, and I know that that's something that's very difficult for us to set, especially as Black men. Like we feel like we are responsible for everybody else's well-being except for our own. So how did you, I don't know if that is necessarily your story, but it has been mine. So how did I want to ask you, like, how do you set boundaries, not only at work, but like in your personal life? Like, what does that look like for you? And how did you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it happened as a result of failure, right? I remember like 2016, 2017, like I was everywhere and doing all the things, but I was never present with myself, like I was doing a lot, I was active, I was moving around, I was making money, but like, if you ask me, was I happy? The answer was no. And I think, boundaries for me I became more aware of them through therapy. And I think becoming aware of them was something that was like, oh, okay, that was a learning experience. But I think upholding them has been something that is a constant, just like process that you have to be very, very clear with yourself about and with others at times. And sometimes I think the biggest person I have to be able to communicate with is myself. I think sometimes having good boundaries means like understanding where I feel comfortable showing up, where I don't, and why. Right. And then being very clear with myself about what that why is. And then once I can communicate that to myself, I can hear it out loud, me say it and name it. I think that gives me the confidence and the level of comfort to discern whether or not is it valuable in this moment to communicate that externally to somebody else, or do I just need to like keep this, here, but just know that it's going to alter my actions in some way? Because I'm a huge fan of like, people don't simply use words to communicate. And I'm a huge fan of discerning how people communicate independent of the words that they use with me. So I'm really big on like just acknowledging the fact that like sometimes how I engage with people or how do they engage with me is a form of communication and might be reflective of a boundary that they might not be overtly communicating, right? Like in words. So it's really important to just keep that in mind at all times and just acknowledge people where they are and acknowledge myself where I'm at. And in doing so, I think I've just been able to be a lot happier and a lot more at peace in terms of just navigating personal relationships, business relationships. Like I had a former partner of mine in work that like just completely just like kind of ghosted the business. Like they just kind of like just fell off the scope. They just weren't responsive, no emails, no text messages, nothing. And, initially I was just like, is something wrong? Did I do something? What happened to them? I remember reaching out, I'm responsive. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? Like, this isn't about me and I shouldn't personalize that, but this is the form of someone in some capacity setting a boundary. And it's important to acknowledge that and then adjust accordingly. And once I did, it was a lot less about how come they weren't speaking and what we didn't talk about and how we were going to do stuff. And it was very much about, hey, like there was a boundary that was set. I'm gonna acknowledge that and respect that, and let's continue with this work that I have to do. So it's very much, I wouldn't call it an art form, but you just have to be very objective and be able to step outside of yourself and understand that everyone's method and means of communication is the same. Everyone's means of processing is the same. But as long as you understand you and yours, you can then discern how you want to go about navigating with other people to arrive at a place where you feel at peace and you're not, stressed out and pulling your hair out and walking around upset because you're trying to internalize everything.
Yeah, nah. How often do we do that though? Like where somebody will do something which is like very clear and about how they feel with themselves and maybe just the environment around them, and we'll take that as feedback for what we're doing wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like we don't know what that person's doing, like going through.
Yeah. I think oftentimes we're made to believe that if something doesn't work out in accordance with our expectations, that means that we did something wrong. Right. That
Mm,
means that like it's a result of our like something that we did. We had a hand or a role rather in this outcome. And in reality, it's like, nah, that's my ego talking, right? And I got to
mm,
be able to be, objective enough to step outside of myself and acknowledge that, hey, like this ain't about me at this point, right? This person has set a boundary, and it's just my job to respect it, right? And detached it from this whole like, well, level of entitlement in relation to a person, and acknowledge that like before this person, was anything relative to me, they were human, right?
right,
And their first and foremost obligation is to themselves. And like
right.
I need to respect that and be aware of that. It's kind of what, I was talking to one of my boys the other day because he was dealing with something with his parents. And
Mm,
I had told him I was like, therapy had helped me a tremendous amount. I had a tremendous amount of growth in therapy in terms of recognizing that my parents, before they were my dad or my mom or anyone relative to me, they were Johnny and they were, Joyce, right?
mm,
They were people. And these people had lives. They had, you know, insecurities, they had strengths, they had weaknesses. And I deal with that at times, and you'll cause yourself a level of frustration as a child, right? When you expect the certain role of a parent. My mom is supposed to do this, my dad is supposed to do that. It's like, now Johnny is this as a human, as a person, and he gonna be Johnny when he met you, when you arrived on this earth, you're gonna be here and you're gonna be this way until he die. And the moment you can come to terms with your parents as people first and someone relative to you second, i.e. your mom and your dad, the better off you'll be able to navigate that relationship and be at peace with it, because you understand that boundary. It's like, that's Johnny first. That's my dad second. That's Joyce first. That's my mom second. And
mm,
in that, I've been able to live with that relationship. And now all of us are really, really close, and we've always been that way, but there was friction at a certain point because I had this level of expectation of what my mom and my dad should have been for me.
mm,
And when they weren't, it was a level of resentment. It was
mm,
like, how you let me down, you didn't do this, da 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 da. And in reality,
mm,
it's like, wait, once you understand that that's just Johnny being Johnny, it's like, you know what? I ain't
mm,
even mad at homeboy. You know what I mean?
mm.
Like,
That's in his nature. You know what
right.
I'm saying? A lot of times we don't accept people at their face value, man. Like, bro, I was literally just talking to my therapist about this. This is alignment, bro. You said a lot of things that just made me like realize, like, yo, God places people in your life and situations for you to really get the message. Like, I
Right.
guess he didn't feel like I got the message in therapy earlier today, because what you just said was like exactly what my therapist said, but just differently. It made me see it from a different angle. You're talking about how we have parents and we have these like expectations of what our parents should do based on how we feel and all these different things that we grow up with. And just just understanding that at the end of the day, they're a human being first, and not even necessarily a human being first. They're themselves, right? And we can't put our expectation of what we want them to be on them, because then this is what my therapist always calls it, we're shoulding, right? Like
Yeah.
you said, they should be this way, they should do this, they should do that, and what shoulding does, right? When you're shoulding somebody, you're basically setting yourself up to put them on this pedestal or this level or standard that they may not even be aware of.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so when they fall short of that, it creates that level of resentment that you talked about, right? Because
Yeah.
like, well, they should have been doing this, they should have been doing that, and they're not doing it. Now I resent them. Now I'm mad at them. I'm disgusted because how could they not live up to the standard that I set for them that I may not even have communicated with them?
Communicate it.
You
Right.
know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like, how
Yeah.
come you're not speaking the language that I never taught you? You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right. Like, and we don't even realize that we're doing this, right? We
right.
don't even realize that on a subconscious level, we have all these expectations of people that drive how we interact with them and change our behavior towards them based on their behavior towards us, when their behavior towards us is just their natural behavior that has always been.
Exactly. Totally.
Wow.
Like 1000%. You're absolutely right, man. You're absolutely right.
Wow.
It's so crazy that we're having this conversation, because I promise you, it's something that, like, as you mentioned, like, it happened recently, and it's something I constantly navigate every week. Like, I chop it up with my mom, and it's my brain. It's like, hey, I'm talking to my mom today.
Mm-hmm.
And then this moment of the conversation, now I'm talking to Joyce. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when you can understand like how to navigate that, man, it'll save you a lot of stress.
It will save you a lot of stress, man, because we have these like we do it in relationships. We do it like in romantic relationships, platonic relationships, family relationships. We do it almost all the time, where we have these expectations and like what we think a person can be, right? Like, I know a lot of people have family members in their life, and they're like, man, I just wish this person, or just even a person in their life, I just wish this person would get to this level. I know I can see them doing this, I can see them doing that. And it's like, bro, they may not ever get there. Me and my therapist talk about that all the time, because that's something I struggle with heavily, right? Like, I'm the person, I want to push everybody to the potential that I see for them, right? I'm like, man, you could be running a business, you could be doing this, you could be doing that. You got the passion. You help me with stuff all the time. Like, yo, you just need to take this public. Start an Instagram. I start creating, you know what I'm saying? Like, all these fantasies and like worlds that they not even actually living in, that they're kind of maybe even terrified of, right? And expect them to then deliver on that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, bro, you can't, you know what I'm saying? You can't expect everybody to be doing what you envision them to do. They got their own life.
And and to add on to that, it's also this idea that even if you did, right, let's say that you did sit down with them and you gave them these great ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
You giving someone a great idea doesn't entitle you to that person's outcome and result, right? Because I can impart some wisdom and some knowledge. I could give you the loan. I could give you the money. I could draft the business plan, give you the bread for it. And you can still sit there and not do exactly what I want you to do, because you're a different human. You might have a different interpretation of it, right? You might not just be ready or in an emotional place, right? We talk about that intersection of wellness in our human a lot, that intersection between wellness, performance, wellness, culture, right? Mm-hmm. You might get all the resources you absolutely need, but because of wherever you are in life, because of your perception at that time, and you might not be in a place to manifest and actually execute. And it's like, am I going to take that and hold it against you? Right. It's like, we got to learn how to like really take a step back and kind of recognize that, one, we're not wired the same way as everyone else, and everyone else isn't wired the same way as us, but there's nothing wrong with that. Right. And then also normalize the idea of like, hey, everyone who I'm in contact with, right? My job is to show up for them where they are when they need me to, not when I feel like they need me to. It's like, and I think when we can process that and we can live that out, again, it's very, very empowering to have those kind of boundaries and that level of understanding within yourself, and then be able to identify moments outside of yourself where that is applicable, and you need to kind of like exercise that knowledge and that information.
Absolutely, bro. I feel like you're really good at empathizing with others. I think it takes a lot of empathy to be able to disconnect, for lack of better words, your parent from the human being that they are, right? It's hard for us to do that as children. Do you feel like you weren't always that way, right? So how did you make that shift? Because I feel like a lot of us struggle with that.
I think it happened in two different instances. The first one was when I was in college. When I was in undergrad, I went through I was probably one of the lowest points in my life. I was away from home. One of my sisters was sick. She needed like a liver transplant. Like, it was just, it was a really like just dark time in my family overall. At the same time, I had lost my scholarship to play sports. So I was very, very much in like this weird identity, or like a lack of identity for myself, because the sport that I loved all my life, that I grew up and envisioned myself having as a career, as a professional, was now no longer like on the table. It was like, well, who are you now? Like, what are you going to do now?
Right.
And in that moment, I really wanted my mom and dad to kind of like just put on the cape and like save the day. And in reality, that's just not how it panned out. It they didn't put me in a situation, right? But you know, I've seen my other friends who were in similar spaces at a time, and when they hit the bottom of the bottom, mom and dad came and pulled up and just made things happen for them. And I think in that moment, I was like, what, 21, 20, maybe 22, somewhere in that range. And you know, in my head, I'm like the smartest guy in the room, and I'm like an adult. At least I think I am, right? And it was very much one of those moments where I had to say to myself, like, yo, I did this, right? The situation that I am in is a result of my actions and my poor choices and my negligence. So to expect anyone outside of me to come in and save the day and, like, you know, throw me a lifeline, that's a bit much, right? And then secondarily, it's like, okay, I moved back home. And when I moved back home, I very quickly realized that home was not home for me, right? Like living with my parents, you know, learning from my parents all those years in terms of growing up in their household and then moving back as an adult. It was day one. I was like, oh, this is not home for me. This is not how I live. This environment. I'm not an 18-year-old, 17-year-old kid anymore.
Right.
And it was made very real to me that if I didn't do certain things for myself, that the outcome for me would be a very similar outcome to a lot of other Black and brown men who I know who, you know, feel like they don't have a lot of support, whether in terms of like their education and pursuit of a career, whether in terms of dating, whether in terms of just having a good quality example to say, this is the way that you can approach this, right? Like, I didn't have the traditional, like, you know, or so my mom and my dad is going to do this for me. It was like, no, figure it out on your own because mommy is too busy with this and daddy got this going on. So you got to like navigate. And for me, it was jarring, but I would say at the same time, it was a learning experience, and I figured it out. It took me some, you know, some hurdles, some challenges along the way. But once I recognized that, like, my parents were doing the best as people that they could possibly do, and I was able to understand that, and then recognize simultaneously that, you know what, like, Johnny had been Johnny his whole life. Just because he came my dad don't mean he gonna stop being Johnny. And Joyce has been Joyce her whole life. Just because she's my mom don't mean she gonna stop being Joyce. When I get to know and fall in love with Johnny and Joyce, my relationship with my parents was empowering, and it grew and it manifested into something beautiful. But I had to let go of that expectation of, you're my mom and you're my dad and you're supposed to do things like this. It's like, no, it just doesn't work that way. And from that moment forward, you know, I think what really brought it home for me was just conversations with my therapist. And you know, she spelled it out to me. It was something that I experienced and I felt internally, but I didn't have the words to kind of navigate and process. But man, once that was one of our first sessions, but once we did, man, I promise you, it was a game changer.
Right. So what were some of the things that you worked, first of all, before we even get into what you worked on in therapy, how did you get into therapy, right? Like what was that story? Because everybody's story is different.
Yeah, I was, well, truth of the matter is I was in a relationship that was just unhealthy. And my partner at the time had her own issues in terms of her personal mental health. And after we had, you know, decided to just part ways, I was talking to one of my friends about it. And they were like, yo, P, the kind of stuff you was dealing with, bro, like, that's not normal. And you really should think about like seeking a therapist. And I was kind of like,
I don't know.
Right. And I remember, you know, one of the things that even in that relationship that had got mentioned, you know, I used to like write down on I had a blog. So, you know, I was writing. So I used to blog about my personal feelings. And my blog, even though this was on the internet, which is crazy to think about, I was writing like I was the only one reading it. And it was very, very personal. Like I wrote about all kinds of stuff that, like, I looking back on it, I was like, oh, I don't like people knowing that about me anymore, but whatever. So she would get mad at me about doing that. But then she would have these moments where she'd be like, yo, she really should talk to somebody. But because, you know, I compartmentalized that relationship and kind of everything she would, after a certain point, everything she would say to me, I would just block it out and be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
When one of my best friends had mentioned it to me, I was like, man, that's crazy. I might really consider that. And then I remember one day I was on a Greyhound bus and I'm boarding this bus and I run into a woman I went to college with who I hadn't seen in like maybe almost 10 years. Like it had been forever since I saw this woman. And I never forget, I was talking to her and she was like, yo, yeah, I'm in grad school. I'm at Howard, getting my PhD, I'm gonna be a therapist. And I was like, what you mean? She was like, I'm gonna be a therapist. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk to people, I'm gonna help them out. And I was like, well, what's your concentration? Because my dad is a social worker. So I understand that like being a therapist isn't as, direct in terms of like, there's different types, right? It's not just about like, oh, I talk to people. It's like, well, you know what I mean? Like it's more layered than that. So I started talking to her about it. And I was like, can I be a patient? Like, can I be a client? Like, can we figure something out? And she was like, yeah, because I knew her in college, but we weren't like homies or nothing like that.
Right. So there was no bias in there.
Right. Like she knew of me, but she ain't like know me, but like it was cool. It was like, oh, hi, bye, that kind of thing. She said, yeah, and I kid you not, that we had a session like right there, like that whole ride. Like we was on our bus for maybe like, I don't know, 2.5 hours. Yeah, I got off that bus, man, my brain was like this. And ever since, like I had on retainer. I was paying her monthly. And then I was seeing her almost weekly at one point. And then over the years, it just got to a point where I'm just in a healthier space and a better space overall. So now I probably speak to her like maybe once a month, if that, maybe one, definitely every other month, like bi-monthly, but it's to the point now where, we don't speak as frequently, but something comes up and, I need a little bit more support in terms of guidance and navigating thought. She is the person that gets the call, and yeah, it's been great. It's been great.
Man, I always tell people how much of an advantage it is to have a therapist that you have a good relationship with, that you feel comfortable in that space, like really expressing yourself, man. Because when you have those moments where you really need that support, or you need somebody to like kind of talk you through things and help you to kind of like put things together and make sure that you're not crazy for how you feel, all that kind of stuff, bro. Like that's when you go to your therapist for that, man. I think a lot of us go to our friends, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of the things that we go to our friends for, we should actually be going to the therapist for.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I got a piece that I wrote recently, and it's actually titled like "Conversation with My Therapist." And one of the examples that I highlight is this idea of like something can be therapeutic, but that doesn't mean it's therapy, right? And being able to like to be able to discern that and like to use those words to articulate that is really important, because again, having a conversation and checking in with your boys is therapeutic. It can be, right? That is not therapist. And when you project that level of expectation on people who aren't qualified professionals, right? One, they're not qualified professionals, but also two, it's like, that is a lot. That's a heavy toll, right? That's a heavy like burden for someone to carry. And I think, if I'm being objective, at times I've had to be very clear with myself about the boundaries that I have in relationships with friends, with women, and making sure that like, let me not like treat this like a therapy session. Like I can vent to you, that's cool. But in terms of actually like having therapy, like, you're not my therapist, you're my girlfriend. You're not my therapist, you're my boy. You're not my therapist, you're my mom. You're not my therapist, you're my pastor, right? It's like, my therapist is my therapist. And let me not, project energy into this relationship, into this dynamic that is going to make it feel or give the illusion or the conception that this is actually indeed therapy. It's just therapeutic. And there's a big difference between the two.
Right. Nah, that's, man, you hit the nail on the head. I say that all the time, man, because I have people that are like, why do I need to go to therapy? Your page is therapy. I'm like, bro, whoa. I will never try to make it seem like you can get everything that I've learned and like gained from therapy off of the Express Yourself Black Man page. That is not, no. It's not therapy, bro. It's therapeutic, and it gives you insight from therapy, and it may help you feel better. It may help you feel more seen, understood, all that kind of stuff, but it is not therapy. And until you actually go into therapy and you actually do the work and go through the process with a therapist that you actually like and feel comfortable with, you won't understand what I mean. I think a lot of people may think that like I'm trying to like get more people into therapy. And it's like, nah, bro, I'm just trying to get y'all to understand, like, we don't understand what therapy is as a community, and we try to label everything as therapy instead of just going to therapy.
Right. Yeah,
like,
no, for sure.
Yeah, like, nah, bro, you got to go to therapy to understand what therapy is, bro. Like, it's just really that simple.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I think what the dope thing that you've done with Express Yourself Black Man has been to just normalize conversations around it. Like that's something that I think, oftentimes kind of gets like overlooked or doesn't get, talked about enough, but like just normalizing it to the point where like it's not like, the word depression, right? Like it used to be such like, oh wow, what's that? It's like, oh, like sometimes you have to normalize talking about these things, talking about things that have been, traditionally seen as taboo within certain cultures. And at least within our community, I would say that it is always a good time to talk about the need and the resources and the lack of access, but then accessible, information and resources and communities and networks for folks who normalize the idea of therapy specifically for Black men. Like I don't think it is something that can ever be overlooked or overstated, and I think it's invaluable. And I think the work that you do is profound. So I just want to give you your flowers in that moment because that's why I think it's so dope, bro. It's like you are essentially taking something that has traditionally for generations been swept under the table and ignored, and kind of like just like we don't, I'll leave that alone. That's for white people, and are making it very common for that the next generation of fathers and sons can be better fathers and sons to their communities and to their families, and that's invaluable, bro. Like that's the kind of stuff that like changes the world eventually.
Yeah, bro. Nah, I really appreciate that, man. I'm receiving those flowers, man. I think for me, it really all started with just understanding not only what therapy has done for me, but what not talking about therapy and not talking about depression and anxiety, what that has also done to me. You know what I'm saying? Feeling like I'm alone, feeling like I can't talk about these things, feeling like if I talk about it, people gonna think I'm crazy or I need like to be in an insane asylum and all these kind of things. And that puts on a certain level of pressure that makes me feel like I can't have these conversations or I can't get through what I'm going through, right? Like, so I think normalization is not only it's more than just like having the conversations on the platform. I think the conversations on the platform are dope, but what I try to do is facilitate a space where you can send something to your bro and then y'all can just go and have a conversation too. You know what I'm saying? Like I like when people share it on their stories and then they ask the whole story a question. It's like, damn, like that's 50 to 100 people. That's probably, you know what I'm saying? I love that. Like I love that we create these conversations from the content because that's what it's for, man. Like I don't want people just coming in the comments and responding to me in the comments and like, yo, bro, this is great. Nah, bro, share with the people in your network. You don't even got to share to get me a follow. I don't care about that. I just care about the value and the conversation that y'all gonna have as a result of that. Like that's what's important is the impact that you have in your local community. You don't have to go viral and go crazy and all these different, like we don't need millions and millions and millions of followers. All you got to do is impact that person right next to you. Like that's all you need to do. And then they go and they do what they need to do and they make sure that they reciprocate and they spread that energy elsewhere as well, man. So I appreciate you giving me the flowers, man. That's I'm glad that that's what you feel when you see the community, you see Express Yourself Black Man, because that's what it is, man. That's what I'm trying to do, right? Like I'm really trying to create and foster a space where it's not taboo to talk about therapy, depression, anxiety, insecurity. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not taboo to talk about it at all. This is stuff we all go through. And then when you see the likes and you see the comments, it's like, oh, all right, you know what I'm saying? All right, cool. I'm not tripping. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what it's really all about. That's why I'll sit there and I'll say, yeah, bro, I've been cheated on. And it sucked. And I was angry and I was mad and all these different things. But look at me now. I'm here. Right. Because we don't, that's another thing we don't see. We don't see people that are like, yo, bro, I got cheated on. We broke up, but I'm good. You know what I'm saying? We see that I got cheated on. We broke up. I hate women.
Right. Yeah.
Or I hate men. It's like, nah, bro, let's normalize the other side of that. There's hundreds of thousands of millions of people that have been cheated on, that have been through bad breakups, that have been through heartbreak and are great. They have families, they're functioning, they're good human beings. You know what I'm saying? We just don't amplify those voices. So it's about making sure that we amplify those voices and have those conversations, man. Like, so I'm glad, man. I'm really glad that that's what you're getting out of that's what you see out of the platform, bro, for real.
Yeah, man. Credit to you.
Yeah, bro. Absolutely, man. So, man, can you tell the people if you have anything that you got coming up or anything like that, bro, that you want to promote or anything like that, man?
For sure. Fit for Us, the creative agency we have that I lead, we have a June kickback coming up. It's
Mhm.
for Black and Brown wellness folks. You are definitely invited. Anyone who is a wellness professional, this is going down Juneteenth weekend. It's going to be in
Ooh,
Harlem. It's going to be a
okay,
beautiful rooftop. It's going to be outside. So it's
okay,
going to be a good time. This is for Black
solid.
and Brown wellness professionals. July 23rd,
Mhm.
we are having an actual like party, like a brunch, like
Ooh,
rooftop party.
okay.
And that is for like the community. So like
Mhm.
it's, drinks are sponsored, so it's complimentary beverages. It's free for the community.
Mhm.
It's a complimentary RSVP. So like any and all Black and Brown folks who love wellness, they
Mhm.
support wellness professionals in any capacity. If you're a member in the community, you're invited to come.
Mhm.
And then last but not least, I would speak to just check me out on Good Work on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's GOODWRK. We're having a Fit for Us event specifically for Black women. Actually, sorry, you can edit this out because it happens on Wednesday. And I know this episode doesn't come out anytime like in the
Yeah.
near
Nah, it's
future.
cool. It's cool. Let's go ahead. Yeah.
But we have an event coming up this Wednesday. It's called Spaces. And Spaces is basically our ability to execute an event that's a closed and safe space for Black folks in the community. So for that event, this month's theme is fibroids, and then talking about like maternal health disparities and how they impact Black women disproportionately. So like we're really just going to have like some OBGYNs, some general practitioners, some moms, as well as some folks who live with fibroids, and really just a space for sharing of information, for resources, giving support to people who may be considering motherhood and parenting, and or people who are dealing with in real time fibroids, because both of them have a very unique and I would say like macro impact on Black women in our community. So we want to just do our part to like be a resource to that to them, because we recognize that like we're currently in a time where like Black women's bodies and women's bodies and people with vaginas bodies in general are just being policed by the government. So we want to provide as much resources and information to people as possible. So that's Spaces. That's this Wednesday. It's a free virtual event for folks to sign up on. Link is in the Fit for Us bio for folks to sign up on. That's Fit for Us on Instagram. And you can check me out at Good Work on Instagram. That's GOODWRK.
Man, Percell, thank you so much for the gems, bro. I wish you nothing but the best, bro. I'm definitely down for the brunch and any other events and anything that you have planned, any collaborations, anything like that, bro. Let me know, man.
Yo, I'm excited, man. We're currently building the exclusive community, and it's going to have so many dope features. We're partnering with a Black organization to offer low-cost therapy to each member of the exclusive community. And when I say low cost, I mean that members will be able to get therapy sessions for less than $50, regardless of who they are and where they are. We're also going to have free ebooks and courses, including both the Hurting the Healing ebook and the therapy ebook I'm currently writing, live podcast episodes where you'll be able to interact with the guest and I in real time, community forums, exclusive merch, and categorized content so you can easily find information that may be useful to you. So go to expressyourselfblackman.com/therapy and register for early access. It's literally a 30-second process. I just need your name, email, and social media handle to make sure you get access before anyone else. And before I dip, I just want to thank you for your support. Without people like you, none of this would be possible. I can't wait to see you when we launch.
Sometimes I know you feel like you ain't got nobody to speak to. A shoulder to lean on somebody you could preach to. No, you need to hear it, my brother, I love you. We got way too much to live for.